Welcome back. Another episode of RX Radio. Unbelievable guest today. Very excited to get into that. We delve into the realm of sports psychology with a trained professional. Now, sports psychology, I think, has trended very similar to business, and it's intersected with sort of the fitness coaching world. A lot of people do it. Not a lot of people do it well. And that's why we don't discuss a ton of business. When we do, we bring on people that we vet and we trust and do a great job. Sports psychology, I think FA is going to be the first time we've had a sports psychology or performance psychology coach on the show, and for good reason. And he'll likely be the only one we have, at least for a really long time. So I could do an intro and I could talk about FA's accolades. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to let someone else do it who is far more trustworthy than me, or at least better at the game of soccer than I am. Great teams come from great individuals doing great work. As a club, Faheem has an immeasurable impact on our first team athletes' mental readiness and elite performance. From our very first session to now, Faheem's experience, knowledge, and passion for performance psychology has significantly influenced our program. David Beckham. So I'm not going to try and follow that up. Fa is a guy I met down in Tampa, Florida, alongside Yo Murphy at House of Athlete Tampa. Depth over distance immediately clicked. You'll see why. Really, really special episodes. I hope you guys enjoy. Learn more about Fa. IG is on is in the show notes, and website sbtb.co. So again, all that will be in the show notes for those of you looking to reach out. And I highly recommend you get into some of his reading. I highly recommend take a look at the membership side of things. Unbelievable resource. So great to have him kind of in the pocket. You'll definitely be seeing more of him on the show as we move forward. That being said, so I hope you guys enjoy the episode. One quick note, huge thanks to everyone who's already registered for the opt-in list for the next semester PSL1. That will be going live next week. So on the 12th, everyone who's in that opt-in list will get the only discount that we offer. So L1, we've been around for 6-7 years now. We're working on the second edition of the manual as we speak. On one of these 1,000 tabs I have open, PSL1 second edition is going to be soon ready in print. All of you previous coaches can order it. It'll get sent out once it's done. Now, for those of you looking to get in, head on over to www.pre-script.com. Just go to PSL1, leave your email, and when the registration opens next week on the 12th, you're going to get an email with an exclusive registration discount code. So get on that opt-in list, because once it's open, it goes up to regular price, and you kind of miss the window on that. This will be our last semester for the year. This will make you eligible for January 26 L3. So if you're planning your education curriculum for next year, and I highly suggest that you do that as a professional, you can get L1 done now. L2 will be offered 3 times next year, and then 2 of which will keep you eligible for the L3 in January 26. So do keep an eye on that. If you guys are looking to get through L1, L2, L3, you got to jump in now to be ready by January 2026. Some exciting stuff coming for L3 alumni. Those of you who have gone through PSL3, came out in person, coached alongside us. We have some really interesting internship opportunities at the pro athlete level. So do keep an eye out on that. For those of you looking to get into L1, this is what's at the end of the tunnel. We're looking to really pad the resume. We're looking to give you guys firsthand experience and firsthand knowledge. So PSL1, hop in now. We'll see you in L3 in 26. Do enjoy the episode. Listen it back. I've actually listened it back a handful of times since recording it. Fa is an unbelievable resource, great person to boot. I hope you guys enjoy. We'll see you next week.
You're tuned in to RX Radio.
You said let's go. You're just recently back in Miami now, or have you been back for a little bit?
No, so I've been back probably about a week and a half ago. I've come from, I was always gone, man. That's one of the things inspires me. I get so much inspiration from watching you jet set around the world. I was doing a lot of traveling, man, and I realized that as a father, I really wanted to put some roots in and impact the soil that my kids were on. I felt like I was making a difference in the world, but also within the community that they were occupying within. So I don't travel as much as I'm traveling. I'm traveling a lot in the next couple months, but I try not to travel as much as I used to. So, I've been home for about a week and a half now, and it's been great being back and being around the family.
So I deliberately overstepped the usual podcast intro thing because I'm going to do the thing where I can say all of the stuff that you can't refute prior to, and I'm going to edit it because you're going to sit there and be like, nah, it's not like that, nah. So I get to say all of the real nice shit. I'm going to give you your flowers before.
Sure.
But
I appreciate
in the
that.
interest of continuity in the podcast world, like for those of you unfamiliar, or for those at home unfamiliar with like kind of what you do, because what you do, how you came about doing it, and the field in which you do it in have a really interesting interconnection, and it's quite like a cosmic emergence of how all three of these things kind of came to be, and I think it's. Like you kind of said off the top before we hit record, something to the effect of like whatever comes up was what the universe had intended. And I think you embody that in what you do and how you do it and how you came to do it. So like, just like an overview of kind of how you came to be where you are.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, I appreciate the intention behind that question, right? Because I think we can get crowded by the labels, right? That we define, that we kind of like introduce ourselves to the world, that sometimes they stifle us without us necessarily even knowing it. So I think allowing us to meet whoever the person is the moment, is powerful, right? Because I may want to introduce myself as, I'm a human being first. You catch me next week, ask me the same question, I might lead with a father first, right? But for the context of the conversation around what we're getting ready to embark on, I define myself as a performance psychology coach. I've been in this practice for about 16 years. Prior to that, I was a high performance athlete, high school, college football, had a chance to transition to the NFL, went through great suffering. I found my calling through great suffering, lost two of my sisters, decided to step away from the sport that I loved. Throughout the healing and the growth journey that I went on, I realized that I was scraping to try to find someone to help me connect the dots to that growth, connect the dots to the meaning. And the teams did the best they could. They put me in contact with sports psychs and therapists that worked with the team or within the structure of the team. And none of them really helped me out, man, to be honest. I didn't really have I didn't feel resonance. I didn't feel like there was a space that was carved out that felt like it was a space carved out for me. And to be honest, Jay, man, I got tired of just talking about it, right? I don't want anyone to subscribe or diagnose me, right? I just wanted someone to help me figure this shit out. And, for me, it was a journey that took me to finding someone who had a background in psychology, who specialized in coaching, powerful athletes and powerful achievers. Started working with that coach in New York, man. He was an older gentleman. Actually, he was turning 70 when I met him. And I've been with him, Marcus, until he passed away 5 years ago. And he kind of helped me put the pieces together. And it was through working with him I realized that my calling was to do similar work in similar space, to start taking on the space, occupying the space of coaching. And yeah, man, I've been in love and clothed in purpose ever since.
You mentioned like putting the pieces together because, and I feel like podcasts might even be to blame for this, but there's a stagnation in the healing process. There's a lot of, what would be the right word? There's a lot of relishing in the toxicity of chronic healing. Like, I feel like there's a lot of singing kumbaya stuff. And well, for you coming out of the athletics world, like coming out of high performance and looking to like, I need, like, you're looking for answers. Like, I don't want to just repeat myself. I don't want to just, I don't want to just dig up and rebury this over and over again. Like what you said, connecting the dots. What were those dots that started to connect? What was missing, or what is missing in your mind in this, like in the psychology meets performance? Like, how do people get trapped in like a cycle of healing, kind of succumb to the toxicity of it? And where did you break out of that?
Man, that's a powerful question, man. I never forget one of my first sessions with my coach, as I was going through just the journey of suffering, he turns to me and he goes, at some point, you got to turn around and use it. At some point, you're going to get to the bottom of that enoughness and you're going to say to yourself, it's time to move ahead. It's time to climb out of this pit that you found yourself in. And, he shared with me, and I truly believe this, who the universe has the biggest dharma usually takes them through the greatest suffering. Right. So for me, the first step was making sense of where I was, not allowing myself to tap into victimhood, understanding that my perception of what I was experiencing had a lot to do with not only what I was going through, but how I was going to navigate out of it. And when I was in this space of connecting more to the pain, I needed someone to just simplify it. Sometimes you just need someone to tell you, hey, man, just go 10 yards and turn out. And a lot of the times, man, he was like, hey, fuck, can you do these two things between now and next week? And I remember being like, yeah, but what the fuck does that have to do with? He's like, hey, can you just do these 2-3 things between now and next Wednesday? So I needed someone to, although it didn't make sense at the time, I needed someone to just move. Sometimes you just need to move the yardsticks, right? I don't need a first down, but I need to know that I went from 2nd and 9 to 3rd and 5. Can I at least see that I made progress? So having a coach, which is the biggest difference in my opinion, having a coach that had the background in psychology to be able to empathize and say, hey, it's okay to make sense of where you are. This is, as macho men, as elite performers, we're taught at an early age that certain emotions are okay to feel and certain emotions you can't feel, right? So having that space where he said, hey, we can feel all of it. You just got to make up your mind that you're going to fucking use it, right? If you feel it, you got to use it. And if you don't want to use it, don't feel it, right? So, and then once we started to make meaning of what I was experiencing, he was able to simplify it and not have me focus on the big summit. He just said, hey, just focus on the first step. And it might not make sense to you, but if you trust me, we'll get there.
With that, I mean, it's in some cases of my life, I'm oftentimes reminded of the sort of the adage of when the student is ready, the teacher appears. With that advice that like, hey, at a certain point you're going to have to use it. How, like, was that a light bulb moment for you? Was that like relatively immediate, or was that something where it took a little festering? It took a little bit, like, am I terraforming the bottom? Are we there? Like, what was that process of like weaponizing that in a positive manner after you heard that?
Yeah, man, to be honest, my initial response was fuck you. I'm gonna be honest with you, Jay. You're in the moment of man, I can't explain to you where I had to go in order to fill that bottom. But the last thing you wanted to hear, or I wanted to hear in that moment was, all right, well, let me know when you're ready to use it. I was so used to people creating space and getting in there and empathizing from a space of victim and sorrow, right? And almost in that fragile state, being able to just kind of almost like sharing that experience with me. However long it take, let's stay in this forever. Like you said, stay in that space consistently. I wasn't used to having someone that was willing to be like, okay, I can feel that. I can connect to all that shit. But I do know that if you don't use it, it'll fucking kill you. That's what I do know. Right. So I think when he said it initially, I was like, fuck you. I was pissed off for about a week. Right. Where, hey, Father, you're missing our appointments. Are you good? You're supposed to be here. Fuck you. I'm not returning phone calls. And then I never forget, I was on a run, doing the macho thing, whatever does not get transformed gets transferred. And I was suppressing it without knowing. And that's the problem with suppressing. It can feel a lot like processing. So I remember thinking that I'm processing it. I'm good. Father, you're good. I'm good. And I remember being somewhere and I was watching some movie with some chick I was trying to impress at the time. And there's this scene that came on. I don't even remember what it was. And I felt myself just tearing up, crying and I'm like, whoa, what is it? I'm like, I don't know if it's like some incest she got going on. I'm looking at the drink. But I realized that there was so much in there that still had not been processed. And my inability to do the courageous work and allow myself to kind of fall for the pump fake of believing that I was doing the work without doing the work. When I sat with that and I connected to that, I realized I had to soften my ego. And I had to go in there and humble myself and be willing to kind of look that demon in the eye, and with the right support, help me navigate to get to a better space of ultimate healing and growth.
And what is that? I mean, there's so many different rabbit holes I could go down, but I'm curious to obviously curious of your story. Like, you show me where someone's been, I'll show them where they're going. But like, ultimate growth healing. When did you start, like, from maybe that impetus, that light bulb moment of like, hey, when are you going to use it? And it'd be like, yo, I'm good. And then, you're watching Bridget Jones's Diary 2 weeks later, and you're like, it's like we're cutting onions. Like what is the timeline to that? Like, because I feel one of the things, and I as a performance coach, just purely in the physical space, I've had breakthroughs on this side in just being able to empathize. Right, like we walk in a room with kids, like, hey, you don't ever met me, like, hey, what's that about? Oh, that's about this. Like they look at a tattoo and they go, well, tell me about that. And I tell them, and they're like, oh shit, I just thought you were just like, no, man, like, I've been through shit too, and like make a connection. Like, when did you feel as if like you're now on like the other side of it? What does that process look like? What does it look like today? Is it still like a recall? You got to check yourself. Like, how does that roadmap? What's that trail of breadcrumbs? Where did that lead?
Yeah, I mean, that's again, a powerful question, man. I truly believe there are no end zones, right? This work that we're on, man, we're all on our journey. And I think the greatest gift that I have, I can now see my road in other men and women who are figuring it out, who are achieving greatness and performing at high levels, man. I think high octane, high wired performers who are seeking mastery and greatness like yourself, you guys find it hard to find safe places to put your hat down in order to do the deep work that leads into all the other work, right? And so I think I got to a point where I realized that I wasn't healing. I wasn't going on this journey just for me, right? As I looked to my left and my right, I was seeing warriors who were still struggling with belief systems, thinking patterns, right? Limitations and expanded perceptions, unconscious to conscious reality matrix. There were so many different components that were showing up in these performers that were kings and queens that found no safe haven for them to just kind of take the armor off. So as I started to realize is, oh man, the universe, God didn't have the NFL plan for me. Although I got fucking close, brother. Oh man, I got close. He didn't have, that wasn't what he had written for me. He needed me to be the warrior that was going to keep the porch light on for all those other warriors along their journey, that they could come in and get close to the fire. And then we can work on all the other stuff that helps them become even great champions and warriors within their own respective faces. So I think to answer your question, when I realized that the work that I was doing was leading the light on for other people, not only did it give me more passion and more purpose, but it took away the necessity of the end zone. Because I realized it wasn't about a static goal. It's about, it's about the performance. It's about the presence. It's about what I'm achieving in this moment. What part of this conversation is healing something within me? And then how can I leverage this conversation with this champion that I'm talking to a conversation that I'm having with a first round draft pick middle linebacker for the Saints in about an hour and a half, who finds it hard to tap into that vulnerability. Right? What can I take from this? So I think it's always expanding, man. And I'm forever a student, which is why I always defer and I deflect when people kind of, a lot of praises and stuff like that. Cause we're all walking each other home, man. We're going in the same direction.
You mentioned a pump fake, and I find that super interesting because, I mean, for you to, you talk, I saw recently you spoke of, the habit of awareness. That's something I want to dig into a little bit later on. But you spoke of the pump fake, but you kind of timelined it before the pump fake was cool. The pump fake of healing now is what we see, at least in my, and again, like, I'm not a trained professional, but I see people fall into the same traps, but they think what they're doing is they think they're processing and they're ending up in the same place. So you were doing it way back before you got social credit points for it, right? Because there's this whole reward system that's now built on top of that. Like, because I know people are listening, and I could call them out by fucking name, but they're not going to listen to me. They'll listen to you. That's why I'm trying to do it. It's like, when you're identifying that pump fake in someone else, and you're like, look, you might think you're doing like the work, but you're not even close to the work. You're over here doing this. What are the behaviors that kind of like tip you off that you're like, okay, or what are the cycles, or what are the warning signs of like, hey man, I know you think you got a handle on this, but you ain't got a handle on this.
Sure. The easiest behavior, human behavior, is judgment, right? So I think whenever I find myself rushing to assess or judge someone, I always kind of make sure I put on the internal brakes within myself to make sure I'm creating more space, right? I forget who said it. It was a philosopher who said, all of men's problems within this world stems from their inability to sit still and quiet in a room, right? Right? I know
I'm trying. Well, I know the quote. I'm trying to think. It's French.
Is it Carl Jung? I don't know who it is.
No. It's a French guy. It's on the tip of my tongue.
It's not. Yeah, right. It's not Charles Hanau, I don't think.
No.
Could be. I don't know. No. But to answer your question, man, some of the telltale signs. I also have a background in meditation, so I'm very big on adding elements of pregnant pauses within the work that we're doing. I'm very big on having a goalpost that we want to hit, but making sure the agenda is driven by the person that I see on the screen here, the person that's in front of me in my sessions. I think if you ask the right kind of questions while at the same time removing ego, right? The ego part of you that feels as if there needs to be value coming from this in order for you to feel value coming from this conversation, right? Which is in a very dynamic space of high performance. You have to make sure that there's this constant need to prove value, to prove worthiness, right? So I find for me, what's always been able to kind of create that space, I always share a wound first. Share a wound first, and it exposes a wound in someone else. It allows someone else to feel comfortable. You ever notice that whenever you go to any room, you feel more comfortable taking your coat off the moment you see someone else take their coat off? Right? Or if you at a restaurant, you're like, oh shit, he has his hat on. I guess I can keep my hat on. Now you might say, yeah, most of the times I don't give a fuck about what everyone else is doing, but that defies human logic and nature. We're by design, members of communities, of tribes, right? That's how we survived for hundreds of years, right? So to assume that you're just the one anonymity out of all of it would be careless, reckless even. So I think for me, what I've learned is, instead of feeling as if the person is coming to be helped or coming to be judged or assessed, I always say, all right, if I feel like you're kind of edging around something, whether it's vulnerability, whether it's courage, whether it's strength, whether it's judgment, whether it's anxiety, I try to find that within my own journey. And then I might leverage that by sharing that and then saying, does this resonate with you? Is there anywhere in your life where this resonates with you? And then what you'll find is, and this has been, and I got to tell you, Jay, I've been doing this for a long time, man. This is true, and I'll die on this. There's the mask that we're forced to put on as we go into the world. They say subconsciously, without being aware of it, the first question you ask yourself in any environment, in any community, in any conversation is, am I safe here? And to what extent can I expose myself here? If I'm on a date, is it 60%? Because she doesn't want to know how crazy I am. Or if I'm in a job interview, do I have to be all buttoned up? Can I not show my tats or show my gauges? So you're constantly making this trade-off with yourself. So what that means is that there's something internally within you that's always judging whether or not they can expose themselves and to what extent. When you have a practice of sharing that fullness of who you are, that's where the emotion and the light and the connection from the other being comes from without them even being aware of it. Because there's a part of you that as we start having this conversation, there's the inner Jordan that's like, yo, I'm fucking home here. Let's play. I don't get a chance to play often. Man, I usually got to be, I'm 80% in my work, but man, I feel like I could be 89. Let's fucking go. Right? Yeah, this tattoo means this means that, you know what I'm saying? So when you expose that and you create that and you make it and you make, you do the soul work, man, where like on Avatar, I see you, to truly see someone in the healing work is healing in and of itself. And I think if you do that right, which is why I only take on clients on 2 anniversary dates. Both anniversary dates of both of my sisters who passed is the only time I bring in clients unless there's someone that moves me or I'm connected to. And I take them through a gauntlet before I decide to take them on as clients, because you know how the work is. It's so intimate, man. You go to bed with it. You wake up with it. Right? So that's a roundabout way to answer your question, man. I think when you create the right ecosystem within two human beings, two spirits, I think the healing work and the clarity and the vulnerability kind of takes care of itself.
Is it getting harder?
Man, that's a good question. Yes and no. I remember when, one of the first clients I worked with was Ray Allen, when he was with the Heat. And he told me, he said, "Hey, Fa, you got to understand, when I started playing basketball, they didn't even have nutritionists," right? We had to fly commercial. So we were in the airlines like everyone else in the airports. So understand that the relationship with the work that you're doing, psychology in any capacity, is still a stone that's barely being uncovered. So when I'm in a lot of the rooms or the halls that I'm occupying and I'm helping champions, there's always going to be a percentage of people in there that's like, "Yo, why are you here?" But what I'm finding is that there's more times than not, and I'm sure sports psychs can talk about this, psychs can talk about this, performance psychs, mental conditioning coaches can talk about it. It's starting to become more commonplace than not. You're seeing programs like the University of Alabama. I believe they have 7 mental conditioning skill coaches on their staff. So you're seeing the conversation around how important the mind is becoming more commonplace. What I think is the gift that I have is that I think, humbly, a lot of times when we get in those rooms, it's more about impressing based off of what we know and based off of what we've accomplished. And rarely does someone from the space of psychology make it about Jordan before they make it about themselves. So even when I post my credentials, I always say to a person, "This is great, but who gives a shit? What really matters is how I'm going to help tap in and help you become a better player, help you become a better human being." So I think, in my opinion, it's easy when you make that connection, right? It's hard when you don't make that connection and you're just assuming that because you prioritize something as being important, the champion sitting across from you is also going to prioritize it as being important.
Now, it's funny you mentioned Alabama. With they're such a classic example. It's to play at Alabama is to essentially play in the NFL, right? Like 100%. It's just and you can rattle off probably 10, 15 schools where that's the case.
Yeah.
Now the access to resources, the understanding of the importance, the endorsement from these champions, as you put it, is that just keeping up to the pressure and the distraction? Like if we're looking at a net here, like you've definitely seen the emergence. I forget the last Winter Olympics. Norway always does well in Winter Olympics because go figure. They sent X number. Like there was a correlation between the best teams and the number of sports psychs that they sent with their team. But on the flip side of that, the black part of that yin and yang is the amount of things that are causing disruption, the amount of distractions, the amount of money that these, football, how much money are some of these cats getting just to play with the team that they played with last year? They got the kids getting the bag off a Jimmy John's commercial. And then you walk in, you're like, "Oh man, like this is different than Ray Allen days." Yeah, they may have been flying commercial. They didn't have nutritionists, but they also didn't have someone tweeting about them after the game, like, "Yo, this guy's just throwing or whatever," right? Like, how do you combat that? Like, it's a new landscape for what you have to do, and it seems like every day there's another distraction, another detraction from the process.
Yeah, facts, man. All true. Majority of confidence comes from the ability to be adaptable. And what's your belief on how you feel like you are in an environment that's constantly changing. So you're right. I think there's always this evaluation based off of what needs to be prioritized and where the chaos and the noise is coming from. I do think sports psychs, mental conditioning skills, performance psychologists, I do think it's becoming a box that's being checked, right? So I don't think, and that's the thing. I think, honestly, Jay, and this is where I think you're on a truly different trajectory in life and purpose, is because the missing ingredient to any good gumbo, man, is resonance. That's what it is, man. Like, don't tell me what you know. Tell me why it matters to me. And more important, make it feel as if this is a space that you're carving out because of me, not because of you. So there's a lot of people who have a lot of information. You know what I'm saying? But we can only consume what we can consume. And chances are, if we don't have that resonance and that connection, it's all plus minus anyway. It's not growing roots into where it needs to grow roots into. Right. So yes and no. Yes, there are more people who are now being brought in from the standpoint of how the mind impacts performance. There are more bottom lines being factored into, let's make sure we create a budget for X. Is enough work being placed into, is this person skilled enough to make sure they take this textbook knowledge and make it applicable to a high percentage of the athletes that we're invested in? I don't think so. I think right now the work is getting to, all right, well, if Jordan is showing signs of ADHD, let's have him meet with Candace. Candace write a prescription for him, take some pills, and you'll be ready to go tomorrow morning, right? I don't know if the work is being, in some hallways they are, but I think those are winning cultures. But more times than not, they assume that both things are created equal, and they're not. There are certain programs, certain schools that are doing a really, really top shelf job at it, making sure that they have people in the building that are going to help these young athletes, powerful athletes, feel seen, safe, and secure and be able to go on that journey. Because as you might assume, a lot of those athletes don't even initially know whether or not they can even trust the person they're talking to, because you're getting paid by the same team that's paying them. You know what I'm saying? Which I had to find out the hard way, because I was head performance psychology coach at Inter Miami for 5 years, and the players would leave and get traded. And I'm like, Jay, I still love you, man. Let's set up. We're still meeting every Tuesday. And then I'm like, I'm playing for a different team, man. Like, yeah, I love you, buddy, but I still see you as part of Inter Miami. And that's where, for me, I was like, okay, this part of my life is completely closed. I need to make sure I'm doing complete independent work where I'm not associated with someone's relationship with a club. I'm doing work in isolation.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you still find that as a barrier, like coming in as a freelance now, especially with the younger kids, like coming in, like a combine situation where, they're like this guy's wearing a wire, like he's a Colts fan or something. Like how many different barriers to, because I guess it's set and setting, right? Like if someone's, reaching out to you and is bought in from, some sort of organic reach to listen to a podcast or something, but, in a setting where an agent's setting this up, like how difficult is the process in, and maybe buy-in is the wrong word, but if you're there by anyone else's dime other than the person across from you, you must have to recognize that as a hurdle. Like what are like tools that you use to like break down that wall and be like, look, dog, like legally I can't say anything, or how do you come over? I feel like that's sometimes, and I've run into that, like I don't work for a team, man. Like I ain't saying shit.
Yeah. Yeah. I think, you don't sell what you do. You don't sell what you do. You sell the love by which you do it. Right. I'm a strong believer, more times than not, when I'm in environments and I'm working with athletes, they're not obligated to work with me. Right. Whether I'm in a performance environment like yours or I'm at the University of Miami, they're not obligated. Right. So for me, what I find is always a force multiplier is to be in someone's environment in absence of needing, wanting, or trying to desire something other than someone being in their environment. So for example, and I'll clarify it, if I knew that there was an opportunity to help work with someone of your capacity who, let's say your business partner walked out to me, he goes, hey, Fa, I think you'll be great to partner up with us. Plus, I think my business partner, Jordan, could really benefit from having you as a resource. What I would say is, if you want me to come and hang around you and present something to you on Thursday, let me get in on Tuesday. I'll pay to be here extra 2 days. And for Tuesday, I just want to go to the barbershop with you. I want to find the humanness, right? I want to see who you are in absence of, because you have to understand, whether it's University of Alabama or all these professional athletes I'm around, from the moment they sign, they'll never be in an environment where someone's telling them the truth 9 times out of 10. Right. So it's almost refreshing, but it almost becomes I've seen players struggle with, like, their mind struggling with, wait, you don't want shit from me? You get what I'm saying? So I always say if unless it's being something that's being allocated from, hey, this player's struggling, he needs you, he knows this. So let's come in. I'll come in on Thursday. I'll leave on Saturday. But like if I'm going into Performance Center and they're saying, hey, we just want you around so that players can see the benefit of it, I'll spend my own dollar just so I can be around them for a day and a half, just to be in their environment. And then what I find is, you know, whenever you champion, we all want to be championed. We all want to be seen, right? Like, and I think whenever you're in someone's environment, and I challenge you or anyone that's listening, spend the day championing other people and watch how it makes you feel and watch how it draws people to you. Champion, not because you want to get in front of them at Starbucks or they're about to buy the last protein bar. It's the protein bar you want, or you're trying to get their parking spot. See if you can be fully present and champion another human being. And I guarantee you it's a force multiplier. You cannot help but be moved by it. It's almost like watching someone do what they really love, right? I can watch Gordon Ramsay cook for hours, and I don't even like food like that. I can watch you. I've watched you. I've sat back and watched you do the work that you do and have been so captivated by it. And it's not because you're saying anything that's just fucking like, and you do talk a lot of shit. So there's a lot of stuff in here. I'm like, whoa. But it's the presence behind how you do it. And you can tell it because it softens the other human beings in your aura. And everyone kind of feels like everything else just kind of dissipates in the back. So to answer your question, you know, I think when I don't make it mandatory to be in that environment so that the human could be felt, and I just go in and I'm like, all right, I'm here Thursday, it could feel very forced. And I don't like that. That doesn't feel good to my soul. And I've been in environments where someone's like, all right, we got this performance site guy in here. All right, you come in. And I hate that feeling. I don't like that feeling because it makes the person automatically feel as if I'm trying to sell them on something. So what I do to kind of change that environment, as soon as they come in, I'm like, yo, this shit gonna be hella quick. Don't worry, I'm not selling you shit. Let's just, hey, who likes to play? What position you play, big guy? No way you play linebacker. You? Crazy, right? I connect to them on that level to where it softens that defense mechanism. And then they're like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, he's not trying to sell me up on something. This is actually something that's going to help me. So just be in an environment and see the humanness in all of us, man. I think that's what we all desire.
So something I struggle with in my field is not succumbing to the urge of pattern recognition. Right. Like that's why I like working across multiple sports. Like, you know, I got more involved with baseball in the last couple of years, and I have a way of looking at football players because that's just what I've looked at for a decade. I have a way of looking at hockey players. That's what I've known my whole life. And then I got into baseball. I was like, yo, what are these Dominican cats talking about? And then all of a sudden it's like, maybe it's not coming from this, it's coming from that. How do you balance or reconcile like the you know, the old adage of if it's personal, it's universal, mixed with the fact that you've seen a lot of cases, but also play them the man? Like, how do you do that? How do you catch yourself in like, I got it, Foz got it, I did that, but that's still like, how do you do that?
Oh man, I'd probably say simply, man, I'm consistent in the practice of being fully present, right? And I think to recognize a pattern takes you out of the present moment, right? In order for you to see something that's familiar, that means it has to transport you to either an awareness that you had in previous or a projection that you perceived the pattern leading into. So either way, you're not fully present. So for me, whenever I find myself, because I'm good at what I do, man, right? Man, I'm good, man. I'm good. So sometimes I could walk into, and I could have a conversation. I can already read the guy. I'm like, oh yeah, I already know what we're doing. Yeah, let's go. Awesome. Let's build it. And I think for me, I forget, and you'll probably know, the king that used to, there was a king or a prince somewhere who his servant would walk by him and his entire, just a man. Who's that?
Julius Caesar.
Julius Caesar. There we go.
Yeah,
there we go. Sure. So I have things within my environment, from rubber bands to anchors that I keep within my environment to remind me to be fully present. I think sometimes we don't take advantage of how every room, every situation is impacting our psychology, the psychology of who we are, our emotional state of how we are, and our physiology of how we are. Every room we enter. So, yeah, I try not to leave anything to chance.
It's crazy to me that you say that you got rubber bands and anchors. I literally have, I don't know, the camera can't see it. I have here and now tattooed on my thumbs. So I have now tattooed on my right thumb, and I have here because when I'm working, it's the only thing I see is my hand because I work with my hands, obviously. And that's funny because that's and I got that for. I mean, there's a lot of reasons as to why I got it. And you said earlier about like, we go through all your tattoos, but it's funny because that when you. There's an urge, there's an efficiency like in the way our minds work to default to that pattern. And it's funny to hear you talk about like an elastic band, something at your wrist, and I literally have fucking indelible ink burned into my skin.
Well, first of all, I love the tattoos, man. I'm actually when you see me next time, I might dap you up and try to hide it because I might actually get that. That's actually a really great idea.
If people ask me like I don't know how many hundreds of hours I have, what my favorite tattoo is, and it's funny because it reminds me of a performance coach that I had. This is why I have it. So you talked about your coach saying, this is not useful for anyone, but sorry, but I'm going to tell the story. Anyway, you talk about the coach you had that said, when are you going to use it? I had a coach a couple of years ago, and I travel a lot. You travel a lot, and I get scattered. It's not my focus. I'm focused on the business. I'm focused on the athletes. I'm focused on writing. And he, for 2 sessions in a row, so 2 full hours, he sat there. And he asked me what time it was, and he's like, what time is it? I'm like, Mario, no, it's like 3:00. Sorry, I'm running a little bit late. He's like, you don't get it. And he's really successful Italian dude, lives in New York City, Boston Consulting Group, one of the presidents, like big time consulting guy. And for an hour, and I was like pissed, kind of like I resonated so much with that earlier. I was like mad at him. I was like, dog, I can't wait. I'm busy. I'm busy. Why are you fucking with me, man? And then about at the end of the second hour, I said, it's now. And he's like, exactly. And then he goes, where are you? And I'm like, yeah, you son of a bitch. I was so mad at him for that. And then he wrote a book. He wrote a book recently. He sent me the manuscript. He hasn't released it yet, but I'm gonna buy 1 million copies. And then I ended up getting here and now tattooed. So if you get it, man, that'd be dope.
Yeah, what's the name? What's it? Shout them out, man. Shout out those people that do the work. What's the name of his book, man? I'll check it
out. So the book is, he sent me a manuscript, so it's not out yet, but his name is Mario Simon, Boston Consulting Group, vice president of Boston Consulting Group. Yeah, it was wild.
So how was that? How was that journey for you, man? Being an alpha, right? What was the process to finding Mario? What was the process to allowing him into your life, into your space? And how was it? Was it, how did it feel having someone that was an ally on the journey,
Novel. That's when I knew. Because, in a similar fashion, I think when you get to a certain point, you mentioned earlier that when you're sitting down with an athlete, you have the realization, whether they have it or not, that no one's going to tell them the truth, right? They're just going to tell them what they need to hear to throw the ball, to catch the ball, to get through a 4-year program, to say the right things at combine, to, go and make their money. And so it's kind of that. It was difficult to identify. He came along as part of a job. I was a medical director for this company, and he was part of the interview process. The gentleman who owned the company that I was basically training this former pro football player who wanted to come out of retirement, and he owned this company, and he wanted me to be medical director. And he's like, part of the interview process is with this guy. He's like my performance coach, but he's got to clear you first. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, yeah, sure, man, whatever. And I had a chat with him, and we chatted for like a few hours. It was over a Zoom call. And then the next day he emailed me and was like, I take on 5 coaching clients a year for free. I'm a consultant by trade. If you want me to consult in your business, it's like fucking $10,000 an hour. But this is my vocation. This is what I love to do. And I'm not going to charge for it because that's not what I'm trained to do, but I'd love to do it. And I'd love to have you on for free. And I was like, Like kind of what you said earlier. Like, all right, what's this motherfucker trying to? And for a year, like literally for a year, every once a week, twice a week, we would get on calls, and he'd be all over the world. I'd be all over the world. His assistant would always coordinate on and get on a call. And I think one of the first, to answer your question, one of the first times, because it wasn't right away, like it took a bit, and like an informal business relationship over FaceTime or Zoom or whatever. And it was when he started to tell me things that I didn't want to hear. And like, that was when I was like, oh, this guy, like if he was trying to sell me something, he's doing the worst job ever. Because I assume someone would just tell me what I would want to hear. Yeah. And I think at a certain point, like, when you build these environments, like you build these companies and these communities, and you try to, almost like you said with the Julius Caesar reference of the assistant would follow him through the town square and say, "You are only a man." You try and but people at the end of the day, like if you're part of, they don't want to let you down. They want to, and we're all trying to build everything together. But it was someone who just did not care. Who did not care about that. He didn't care about any of the superficial stuff. Not to say that it's superficial, but in his world and what he wanted to achieve with me, it was like, he would pop off on some stuff, and I'm like, did this fucker just say that to me? And it was that I was like, you know what? This has probably been the first person who's been like, and I'm lucky in my close circle to have people who check me, but no one checked me like this before. So I think it was calling me on my bullshit and identifying what that bullshit was. That was when I know. I was like, holy fuck. Like, all right, this guy's got nothing but good intentions, because if he has bad intentions, he's again doing the worst job ever. So that paradoxically, that's what really drew me in, was like almost this, like, there'd be no other reason for him to say this logically other than the fact that he believes it to be true.
Well said, man. Well said. That's why I said, man, I salute you on for those of us who are brave enough to exist within the arena. I salute you on that, man. So kudos to you, man. And shout out Mario.
How do you navigate that from your side? Right? Like, I feel like I just explained a magic trick to another magician, and you're like, yeah, dog, I pull rabbits out of hats all the time. Like, I'd be doing that. Like, how do you what are and I kind of want to get back to the personal universal thing and that quote you have about the habit of awareness. Like, it's something where I walk through my everyday life, and someone bumps into me at the grocery store, and I'm like, what is the rest of your life like if you're running into me? How do you miss me in a grocery store? Like what are the breakthroughs? What are you talk about mile markers, you talk about yard, end zones and not being end zones. How do you know that you're making, like that? Mario knew when he did the here and now thing and he pulled that rabbit out of the hat. I was like, he was like, okay, we've made progress. And he would talk about the progress we've made. He'd be like, you're so much further along. What are your, and what are your mile markers? What are your yardsticks when you're measuring progress in these types of relationships?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer, man. We don't, I think there's this belief that growth comes with experience. And what I tell my clients all the time, that's bullshit. It comes with evaluated experience, right? So one of the things that have been a consistent in my life is, I think it's important for an individual to be intentional about introspective work, right? How are you in this present moment? How would you rate along the path of what it means to be a human being? How would you rate each measurement of your life? Your relationship with your loved ones, your financial health, your spiritual practice, your movement and well-being. Be clear about what scale would you put that on right now? Would you say this is a 9, this is a 5, this is a 8, this is a 7? You can only move forward when you're willing to be honest and clear about where you are foundational right now. The only way to move forward is to get clear on where you are in this present moment. So for me, I have a way of evaluating every single day. And I set an intention before the day begins. This is what my intention is. First, coming from a space of gratitude. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to exist within this day. The problem with things like living is that it happens so often that we begin to take it for granted, right? Unfortunately, that's also a part of the human complex. How can I be so connected and overjoyed and come from a place of gratitude for the wife that I have that's a room next to me without it taking the loss of her for me to understand the value of her. You get what I'm saying? It's the constant yin and yang, right? So for me, when I'm operating at a high level, what am I doing? What am I saying? What are my behaviors? What am I listening to? Who am I having conversations with? So once I got clear about what those 10 things were, for me, it's meditating. For me, it's journaling. For me, it's putting certain things in my body. I do not fuck around with the news at all, right? We become so inundated. You can ask my children, man, if you get in a car with me, we're on audio tape. I've been reading 6 books a month for 10 years. So I'm heavy in literature, right? Because what occupates, they say 5 minutes of news increases the probability of you having a negative day by 87%. 5 minutes, right? We're being conditioned all the time. So whenever I feel like I'm not in alignment or centered, I always look at, and chances are either, if not 5 of the 8 things are missing and I'm being inconsistent with, or I'm at least missing 3 or 4 of them. So those serve as really good reminders for me. And the reason why I'm able to do it and be intentional about it is because I check in as consistently as I check in, right? The problem with being human beings and not having that sense of awareness is that we can go so long on autopilot that you didn't really realize you had an habit until you got 60 days down the path. And you're like, oh man, I didn't realize I've been having a glass of wine every day for the last 60 days. But if you have a way of allowing yourself to set these intentions and disciplines with checking in with yourself, and you're asking yourself the right questions. And I'll send you one of these PDFs that I send all my champions as a way to just check in with self. Going through that process has been transformative to me, and anything that's healed me or had led, powerfully to my life, I always leverage that out to the people I work with. So I'll probably say that's the way I do it. Just, checking in.
Yeah, I feel like so much of this is about this like paradox and reconciliation, because of course it is, because it's a life, and why wouldn't it be anything? Why would it be anything else that
right.
within the performance space, people are always concerned about, and concern is probably the wrong word. The aim with a lot of people who enter into sports psychology is flow state. Right? Like flow state is like this magic realm where, no thinking happens. And it would be akin to like athletic meditation or something like that. How do you, again, and it's another reconciliation question. Like, in baseball, they call it the yips. Dealing with like more technical parts of like golf or being a quarterback, higher pressure situation. How do you instill these frameworks of self-auditing while still opening up for that void or that flow state at the same time? Like, how do you deal with those two? Like, a hypercognitive athlete, real smart, type A, maybe even a hypochondriac, but also like if they find that clear air, dog, look the fuck out, because no one's stopping this guy.
Yeah, man. I think that's where I introduce science in. Flow state comes from alpha, right? We're being inundated all the time with information upon information, right? We're being stimulated from the moment we wake up to check our cell phones, to checking what people are saying on social channels, to getting phone calls from others, or seeing this movie or this video. Did you hear about this person? I always say, if you don't cultivate something daily, shame on you if you think you're going to be able to have access to it in high performance peak state. So what I say is, flow state is alpha. What else are you doing in alpha? Right? If you're not someone who has access to meditation because you feel like it's too foo-foo, okay, you're an idiot. But all right, I'll play with you there. If that's the case, what do you like to do that allows you to disappear within the practice of what you're doing that constitutes with intentionality and effort, with just the right amount of ease? It's not too easy, but it's not too complicated, right? Is it drawing? I know some athletes it's washing dishes. For some, it's doing Legos. I think you see, what's his name? Miles Bridges for the Indiana Pacers. His collections of Legos is insane. So I always tell athletes, find those things that get you in the state of alpha, because whatever you cultivate, you'll have access to it. It's called our reticular activating system. It's the same reason why as soon as you get those white headphones, you go down the street and you see 2 other people with them. Is it because someone purchased it? Of course not. You know that logically. But what ends up happening is you have about 70 bits of information that your body's processing. Only 6% of that you're consciously aware of. So what you put intention around, your brain highlights that as being important, so you see it. That's why you see your Jordans on everyone else. That's why you see someone that reminds you of your girlfriend in every city that you go through, because your brain has understood it as being something important. If you allow yourself to find those things that help you access alpha, again, meditation, reading for me, drawing, puzzling, going for walks, brushing your dog, swimming, the more you can carve out, where else do I feel this flow state? And you do that and you be intentional about carving that in, then it makes it, when you're on the pitch or when you're playing on the field, it makes you more accessible to it, because you've, just like anything else cognitive, it's a discipline that you can work and you can improve upon.
So you find that like prescribing like more active meditation. One thing I've wrestled with, I took like, I don't know, an elective psych class. His name was, the professor's name was Kramer, and it was, I don't know, 20 years ago, whatever the fuck I was in undergrad. And he talked about dualism. And we talked about Descartes and a very dualistic in body and mind. And I've basically been trying to unlearn that since, because I found it really a limiting framework. And it sounds like when you're dealing with athletes, that bringing the tactile and tactical as a conduit to the mental, using the body as a conduit to the mental, is the way that you access like the naysayers of meditation, to which I'm sure there's many. Do you have like, how do you feel about dualism and Western medicine using that as an axiom of body and mind as separate, albeit integrated systems, like in your profession, working uniquely more with people at the very least who use the body, not more than the mind, but as a vehicle of the mind, right? Sure. Rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I see it as a remarrying of both. I think most performers are so used to operating outside of the space of the connection. It's almost like I draw its comparison to our ability to feel as if we're separate from all of humanity. Right? Where in reality, we're connected, whether you want to speak to that or not. They say 99.7% of our gene biome is completely comparable, if not mirrors the person next to us. So you're only talking about a 0.4% difference, right? So for me, I'm always trying to marry that gap, right? Because you get so many high performers that are used to being in the realm of physicality that they forget the role that the mind plays. So I take them through certain challenges and exercises, and we kind of get creative and we stimulate the environment to get the mind involved so they can see those shortcomings. And then what we do is we remove the physical components of it, and then we bring in science and we say, okay, this study was done on this year. This study was done 2 years ago. This study was done with this group of athletes. And you gotta bring it to where they can fucking get it. I always say, are you putting it to where the goats can get it? Right? Because chances are, if you're trying to wow me with the textiles of how things are applicable and why I should give a fuck, and chances are I'm going to zone out, because our attention spans show that right now, on average, from 1990, our attention span of the average person was about 15 seconds. Now it's 9. So I got to give it to you in 9 seconds in a way that's going to captivate you enough to find resonance in what we're saying for you to stay on for the next 10 minutes. And most of us are lost within that conversation and relationship with psychology and the role it plays, because we've been so used to looking at it in duality, that if we don't prioritize that, again, going back to connection of why it's important and where it resonates with you in your life, why it matters to you, how it can be a force multiplier for you, then we kind of get lost in the weeds of everything. So I think a lot of my work isn't very much being a steward for someone that's willing to say, regardless of what your preconceived notions, are you willing to consider something else? Because most of our disease and sickness and suffering comes not from what we don't know, it comes from what we think we know for sure. Right. And when you can be human with someone, and someone can say, all right, well, this is what I believe. Right. A belief is something that can be passed down. It can be taught. My children, I can give them beliefs, but it's up to them to kind of confirm those beliefs. And beliefs can be inundated. They could be removed from you. They can be challenged. But the knowing exists within the core of who we are. And so I think what I try to do often is challenge certain beliefs that a lot of high performers have. And if they're willing to surrender those beliefs, usually there's an opportunity to draw back that connection between the mind and body.
Interesting. I mean, I like common threads. My brain's drawn to like a patterns, which is its default state to it, and it makes me good at some things and bad at others. The word resonance has appeared a lot. Yeah. And I wanted to talk a little bit. You mentioned earlier about show a wound, right? And then they'll share. And you talk, I mean, obviously, I think the catalyst of the 2 anniversaries as a client intake is a good opening salvo to that conversation, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Now, that to me like comes off as empathy, right? Like I know how that feels. When you're dealing with the people you've dealt with at the levels that they deal with, some of the psychological stress, I'm sure it comes from the fact that objectively that's impossible, right? That some of these names of guys that are like, and girls that are at the top of the world, and it's like, it's lonely at the top, right? How do you manage the stress that comes from that, where you can't empathize, where you can't like, no, I can't, if someone, example from my, like, I don't know, quarterback for, I'm not going to say what team, because I don't want to but a quarterback in college is making like 1 point something next year. I got nothing, Doug. I got nothing. I don't know what it's like to be that. Or, a couple hundred injured, worth a couple $100 million, has an injury, could be career ending. Never, I've dealt with it as a professional, but like, how do you resonate at some frequencies that are so rare?
Yeah, man, that's a powerful question, man. I think a powerful thing happens when you occupy a space that's absence of the need to find validation or approval from someone else. I think when you allow yourself to go to that place and arrive from a standpoint of, I'm complete fully as I am, as I present in this space, what comes in this space, what words I use, what information I resource, the resources that we use, everything in this moment is perfect. Nothing else needs to exist absent of this moment. I think when you allow yourself to get to that space, and it's hard to get there, I acknowledge, because we're all, we're human beings and we're drawn towards excellence and approval and success. And, we all want to accomplish great things in life. But if you allow yourself to fully divorce the need, true happiness comes from the divorcing of needing anything other than this moment. In my opinion, when I've had to hold space for people who are carrying a burden that I cannot empathize with, the most powerful thing I've ever done in that moment is I have no idea what it feels like to be at that capacity. In fact, have you ever had a moment where you struggled with understanding what it meant to be empathetic to someone in your life? And then what that does, it turns it on them. And it allows them to, one, put you in, I can understand how my coach might feel. So let me give you what I can give you from this experience so that I can bring your empathy up a little bit. You might not get it, but if I can kind of turn that to where now you're looking at it from the person that's being nurtured to finding ways in which you had to nurture someone with the same limitations, then now you're talking to the human. You're not talking to the star quarterback, right? And there's times where, humbly, I've been like, I talk to my guys and girls like brothers and sisters. And a lot of times I'm like, Jay, I don't fucking get it. Bro, you are a beast. You are a beast. I cannot even imagine, man. I'm freaking out and I got to talk in front of a room full of hundreds. You're playing in front of fucking thousands, bro. You did it. Congrats. Right? And listen, excellence, right, comes at the cost of perfection. We don't chase perfection. Right? But where I struggle because I feel like I need to find something that could work in a relationship to where it can give me at least a percentage of feeling what you're experiencing. And I feel like that judgment is going to probably crowd on me being able to give you the support that need. Have you ever had a moment? You've been a champion for a long time, bro. I mean, you've been playing ball for a long time, but have you ever struggled with just being empathetic to anyone in your life? You know what that feels like? So then you find that that's where the light's in, right? And that's when that quarterback says, yeah, I actually had an auntie who had cancer when I was in high school. I didn't really know. All right, so how did you deal with that? What did you learn from that? How can I learn from it? So what I'm hearing from you is you don't need me to say that I get it. You just need me to hold the space and help you navigate around it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, cool. So then let's do that. You know what I'm saying? So I think there's something beautiful and powerful and healing in being able to say, Jay, I don't have all the fucking answers. I don't, but we're going to make this together. Right. You know, I've heard it. And this is something I truly believe. You know, people who seek mastery rarely want to be rarely want to be led anywhere, but they always want to be accompanied. You know what I'm saying? So the work that I do is in company of. I'm a companion. I can share the road with you. I'm not leading you anywhere. What I'm willing to do is I'm willing to put my 17 years of experience and say, hey, there might be something in this toolkit that you can use, but this road I've never been down. This is your road. All I'm doing is holding this lantern and we're doing this shit together, right? Oh, this looks familiar. Go this way, right? But this is your road. So I think there's something beautiful in that. And then when you connect, I think there's always an opportunity to connect, no matter how separate or removed their experience could be, because they are operating in a very rare space. And I think having the humility to say, hey, I can't go there, right, is healing. And it's been a force multiplier for me in my life and my work.
Is there a consistency in presentation? And presentation sounds like a real clinical word to use, but devoid of another word or better word, is there a consistency in presentation of like the top of the top? Like from the outside Netflix perspective, you know, you could look at the Tiger Woods, you can look at the Kobe's and Jordans, you know, maybe even look at like the Allen Iverson. And I'm sure the list goes on at the top of every sport where like, and I could attest to this with the people that I've worked with that are, you know, one of two, one of one in the world. There's a specification to that build that has a common thread. In my experience, without any professional experience, I like, well, these guys are wired different. Have you come across like stratifications of skills that come at the sacrifice of the things that you need to then hold the lantern for them to see?
Yes. I think even all who walk among us have blind spots in areas of growth. And I think in order to go where you have to go, in order to go to where you're wired to go, it comes with great sacrifice and tremendous discipline and focus. And on the other side of that, extreme cost. And I think what I've learned is to be around the mad scientists within them and be the one of few people that's been able to, because a lot of times what people don't understand is that everyone celebrates greatness, but not everyone champions greatness in the pursuit of it, right? The marriage that is costing you, the friends that it cost you, the girlfriend it cost you, right? The companionship, the community that it cost you. Yeah, you see the guys in the locker room that changes every season and you see this brotherhood, but there's this sense of emptiness that you have to go on. You usually walk that walk alone, especially those Michael Jordans, those Kobe's, right? Those, you know, Serena Williams. So I think a lot of times it's allowing them to be in the presence of that lion, allowing them to be able to own that, but also being able to say, this is what you're losing out on. And the things that I can help illuminate can give better balance and actually promote and actually excel and allow this to flourish even more so than it does from this controlled apex state, right? So I think what I've learned is that, yeah, there's definitely patterns that you notice within those people within those, you know, 1% of 1% that are able to accomplish that level of excellence. And I think what I've learned from just years of supporting athletes of that magnitude, or performers of that magnitude, is being able to, again, come into from a space of meeting the human being first and allowing them to feel safe, seen, and supported in all their variations and shades of who they are, and celebrating that while at the same time holding the light and holding some integrity for who they want to be and at what magnitude they want to be at, where they want to operate at.
How do you, so sacrifice is like I mean, if you want to talk common threads across humanity, across time, sacrifice is probably the most reoccurring religious theme that exists, right? Like one could argue that the resurrection is quite literally what the defining aspect of the corpus Christianity. So how do you, because I know I've worked with a few athletes that are self-sabotagers like you would not believe. And it's they sacrifice the all of the things that would conventionally benefit someone. Like, and I'm talking as fundamental as something like sleep. They just have an unbelievable God-given gift to show up and be the best in the world. And I've had people ask me like, man, imagine if that guy or this girl, like, you know, just did it like everyone else. And then I'd be like, they couldn't do it. There's like how often when you're dealing with people who are top of the top, that it's like a Stockholm syndrome with their sacrifice. That if you gave them their family back, that if you gave them a way to like, hey, you can have this, and it will actually excel you further. That to break the idea that the sacrifice is fuel, that pain, discomfort that causes them is what excels them. Is that a tough sell? Is that a tough cycle to break?
Fuck yeah. Yeah, hell yeah. And I think the problem comes, in my experience, in the desire or the necessity to break the cycle. I remember I used to be a huge fan of Paul Chek Institute, which is why I fuck with you so heavy. Right. And I remember I was reading something that he had written down where he says sometimes it's actually best not to correct the shitty form that someone's been doing for a long time for the probability of increasing the probability of injury because right. You get what I'm saying? So I find that when I'm in this space and I realize that there's a lot of resistance, that the madness is created, but that madness is also contributing to the greatness. Instead of reframing and feeling the necessity to prioritize this importance and forcing this person to see how this importance correlates to, I think what I've learned to do is surrender the need to shift that and instead find ways to improve the form that's shoddy in the first place, right? If I can't improve the posture, maybe it's the grip. So what I start doing is I actually because sometimes I get called by an agent, I get called by a coach, sometimes I get called by a significant other, right? Sometimes I get called by a mom. Sometimes I get called by a teammate, right? So what you can do, sometimes you can make the mistake of making their priorities your agenda, right? Because, you know, I love Jordan. He's great. He's always traveling. All he cares about is his work, his causes, our marriage, and I don't want to lose him, but I can't know how long I can take care of this shit. It's causing us so much pain. Work with my husband. So you get in that space and you understand that, right? Jordan
a couple years late,
champion. But you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So yeah, man, I think I always try to make sure part of my daily practice is checking in the desired interest in other people. Right? Is my thing becoming their thing? Right? Because it's very easy to make my agenda your agenda. But the fascinating thing about it, and this is something I found out recently, probably in the last 4 years, my coaching philosophy is, like, we literally, with the experience that I have in the toolkit that I have, we'll build it along this journey. And that works for 99.9% of high power, high octane athletes. But what I'm realizing is that because everything is so ironed out and so designed ahead of time for them, that some performers actually prefer having everything laid out ahead of time, which removes the personal autonomy that a coaching session should have, because you're following a playbook instead, right? They actually feel safer in that because they know, like, all right, in 6 months, this is everything that we're going to cover. Whereas the void of having that creates an anxiety because I don't know what we're going to say. I don't know what he's going to ask for me. I don't know what, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I've been finding a way to allow both of those to exist.
Yeah, there's a philosopher named Kierkegaard that has a quote that I love, and it's anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. Reminds me of what you just described. Now, what was it about 4 years ago? You know, you've been in this for so long, but you said that, you know, in the last 4 years, that's a Mont Blanc pen. I can hear it. In the last 4 years, the last 4 years, what is it that has sort of spawned this? Is it just the accumulation of the 12 years prior, or was it a bit of a light bulb? And said, oh, I see, like this, the walled garden of this curriculum for this person actually, it gives it's not a straight and narrow path, that the path that we got to walk on is going to be a day to day or a week to week. Like, what was that realization that this has changed your philosophy?
Yeah, it was a player that I was supporting who was playing for the Cowboys at the time, and he was going through a tremendous amount of pain. I mean, from the moment he woke up to the moment he went to bed, and using everything in my arsenal to help him re-identify and connect differently to what he was experiencing, while at the same time aiding himself in other ways and really trying to work on the limiting beliefs that he had around what he was experiencing and what he was perceiving them to be and how he envisioned a better future for himself and kind of like the thinking patterns that he had. They were always all over the place. And when I realized in our journey together, we had worked together for a season, that despite all the magic and all the impact that we had in our session, because he was a twice a week person, there was this uncertainty that caused anxiety, because as he was dealing with the discomfort and the suffering that he was experiencing, it contributed not knowing the roadmap ahead. So whereas in my experience, I was doing the best thing for him by creating an agenda that was stemming from him in every session, what would have done more to calm his mind, right? To give him that sense of stability and foundation and trust in what we're building, is for him to know there is a plan. Not just because you can, again, I talk about what the program entails and, they know from that micro standpoint, but being able to, like, now, if I were to pull up on my screen, I have it now to where you got the entire season. This is what we're going to cover. These are the weeks we're going to do it. And this is what this means when we get to that point. Now, I make sure in small text on the bottom, it says, this is all subject to change based off whoever the fuck shows up in that session for that day. But when I went through that experience, and I looked at it and I evaluated humbly, and I realized that in that moment, I made it more about my coaching philosophy and less about being able to tie into my intuition and knowing what that person needed to assist in him being able to feel more comfortable in the work. That would have given him more time to re-associate himself with where he was in his suffering. So that was a lesson learned.
I feel like a bit of a quote machine, but clarity of vision, flexibility of process. Now,
who's that? I'm writing that down.
I honestly think it's Jon Stewart, the comedian. There's a derivation of it that stems from elsewhere, but I first heard it. It was an address. I'm a big stand-up comedian fan. Some of my former patients and clients are pretty prominent stand-up comedians, and I love stand-up comedy. I do a lot of public speaking. I couldn't imagine my whole job having to be someone to make someone laugh while I speak. And it was an address that Jon Stewart made on the Comedy Network or whatever when he was the host of The Daily Show, the first satirical news show. It would have been over 20 years ago. He made an address on his show the day after 9/11. I was 11 years old, and it stuck with me ever since then. He was, he's a New York guy. He could see the World Trade from his apartment, and he kind of dropped that quote, and it stuck with me ever since. But clarity of vision, flexibility of process.
Man, I was looking for another tattoo. That might.
There you go. Hey, we're getting that one together. You're not getting it. We'll get that. I got guys in Miami. Now it seems like you've embodied the flexibility of process, but for you and what you guys are doing and the business and where you're headed, what is that vision? Like, what is that process flexible towards to the service of?
Man, I want to, man, when I die, man, I want to die with no music in me, man.
Ooh,
that's it.
Chills,
bro. That's what I can't. And I often say, if you can't remove it, then it must be in there for a reason. This desire to shift the world, man, I want to shift it. Like I said, when I leave, I want people all over the world to be like, yeah, like that's how I want to feel, right? Yeah. So right now, the vision is clear, man. I want to continue to do the work at the rate that we're doing the work, but multiply it by 10. I'm allowing myself. There is a mental hurdle to the process of bringing other people in and allowing them to be a part of the vision and trusting that they could get what you want and execute it at that level, right? There's a part of me that likes to kind of like hold everything close to the vest and work on it here, but I realize it stifles you, man. It stifles you. And now we're at a point now where the next level that I want to accomplish, the work that I want to do, being able to connect to a Jordan in Kenya or a Jordan in Europe or a Jordan in East Africa. That comes with being able to expand the team and do the work. And now we're in this point of our process where we're implementing memberships now, and we're doing written material as well. So we're just growth, man, growth and impact, man. We're trying to impact on the global scale too, as well. Yeah.
No, I love the metric of impact as a KPI. I think that's really telling. That's really telling of what the actual goal is, right? Like not a number, but like almost a subjective KPI, like a feeling. I fuck with that. Now, for people interested, I mean, you know, we met down in Tampa, but you're on the move. What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Oh man, I would probably say sbtb.co. sbtb.co. Check us out there. We're outside, as they say. You could also hit me on Instagram, IG, social, Faheem Mujahid. And I have a podcast as well, which I got to get you on my calendar next month. You inspire me, man. I'm gonna reinvest in Riverside. I thought this was trash, but now I realize it works. I was trash.
No, user error, dog. Stick to what you know, man. We got to delegate.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, man. So that's how you get in contact with me, man, and then just tap into the frequency, right? Like even if I believe we could connect with each other just by our intention. So if you're moved and but you're not moved to the point where you want to reach out electronically or email or follow on social, that's cool. Just send me some love, right? Give me some conscious wavelengths my way. That's it. That's all I need.
No, I fuck with it, man.
But love, man.
I've been getting to know you over the last couple of months and then following you on socials. It's been like, it's interesting because I can hear it all in your voice, which I love. And I hope when people listen to this and they follow you, it's like when you can hear it in the authenticity that reigns through, it's like he wrote that. Like it's not an SP, like he wrote that. So no, I appreciate you taking the time. I appreciate what you do, man. I'm looking forward to crossing paths and collaborating in the future. This is a lot of fun, man. I'm going to listen to this one back more than a few times.
Honored, man. Send it to me. I'll share it on my platforms, man. And let's be in touch in the next couple of weeks, man. Get you on next month. I know you're a busy guy. Let me know when are you stationary again? I mean, because I'm sure you're going to be on a plane tomorrow somewhere.
When there's no music left, my man. That's what I'm stationary. Man, that's a moving target. I'll hit you an email. We'll sort it.
All right, let's do it. Hey, man, listen. What I will say, man, is to be inspired is to be in spirit, right? You inspire me, brother. Keep lighting the path for others, man. And I'm honored to know you, man. I'm even, you're one of the reasons why I keep social. You inspire me through the work that you do, man. And it's good to know that there are brothers like yourself that are just as passionate about healing the world, man, and moving us in a powerful trajectory. So thank you for the conversation, man. And let's stay in touch.
I appreciate that so much, man. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, brother. Cheers.
See you, Pa.